Did Bobby D really break the paddle on Leo's ass? Did you see it break? Did you see it crack? Deserved it. And Leo fell off the thing. He threw it, and it was cracked. You saw it, right?
Yeah, he said it broke, that's fine.
Was it a happy accident?
Yes, of course, yeah. No, it's fine, it should have broken. It should have really, it should have been flying or something. I don't know what's going on, you know.
Thank you so much. Full house. All right. Marty.
Yes.
Marty.
Yeah.
How long have we lived?
Oh. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Oh my goodness. This will not be a journey down memory lane because someday you and I will do that for the DGA without any movie to accompany.
That'd be great.
And we love doing that just ourselves. But in the meantime, I just want to start by saying that, you know, for me, this is just an exceptional experience watching your film. And you know how I feel about all of your films, but this one stands out in a way for me that's so impactful. It's an epic journey, but it's not a Hollywood epic for me. It's a humanitarian epic.
Yeah.
I think you demonstrated such sensitivity to the Osage customs, their spoken language, their music, their deep faith in QandA, beginning with, you know, the first opening scene where they hold up the berry pipe and they put it down and then the oil rises as the pipe goes into the ground. And the irony that Osage means the chosen people of chance, which turns out to be, with the discovery of oil, both a blessing and a curse. And your direct involvement with the Osage throughout the making of this film, I think reflects such a foundation of trust that happened, I believe, with your association with Chief Standing Bear.
Yes.
And the Osage survivor community. And can you speak a bit to all of us about that?
Well, we when I saw the presented the book and the script, I immediately, my first reaction was, this has to be right with the Native American groups in this story. Otherwise, I can't even begin to think about how to make it. And once they understood that, I said, it's got to be straight. I mean, you can't. We have to find out what this is, who they are, what the culture, delve into the culture, the spirituality, all of that, the rituals and all that, which ultimately I was very, very concerned because I didn't really know as much. I had an encounter in the early 70s with the Pine Ridge Reservation. I was there for 2 days, 1974, and you know, I was this kid from Lower East Side, New York. I just made Mean Streets. I was editing Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, you know, and I had no idea. I didn't understand I was 31, I think, but I did not understand, going on like 6. I didn't really understand the situation really with the native indigenous population. I didn't get it until I got there, and it was a traumatic experience. It was something that was pretty shocking to me. It was pretty rough. Had a lot to do with Wounded Knee, you know. And I never forgotten it. It stayed with me for years. And it went on for a couple of weeks too. It wasn't just in Pine Ridge, something else going on. And it stayed with me for years, and I kept being more and more fascinated by the Native American culture and the First Nations in Canada. And so when I saw this material, first of all, let's make sure it's okay, you know. And on that basis, I was taken out to Oklahoma. And this is the thing, Steve, you know, I come from downtown New York. Now it's very chic, the area I grew up in. But then it wasn't. Then it was like, you know, the Bowery with Wallace Beery and George Raft, you know. That was the Bowery. I was on the Bowery, you know, and now the Bowery's chic. But what I'm getting at is that it was all angular. It was all hallways, long hallways with one light bulb, you know. When I go to Oklahoma, the prairies, wide open spaces. I mean, you start to even, you start to think differently. You look differently, you know. You hear things differently. And so I had some apprehension upon meeting Chief Standing Bear and his group. But when I got to Pawhuska, which is the main town of the Osage Nation, we went in their office there. There he was, and his wife Julie, and Addie Roanhorse, and Chad Renfro, and a couple of other people. And I assumed that it would be a very simple beginning, a kind of introductory meeting. Instead, it was 2.5 hours. And I think, Steve, the thing about it was that, of course, they knew that the film was going to be made, but when they heard I was making it, because of the association with the underworld films I made. Yeah, I have made a few. 4 or 5 of them out of the 28, whatever, 27. But the point is that they are violent, they're strong that way. Okay. So what they were concerned about was the violence and how I would portray it, and also really that was one aspect. But primarily it was about trust. Where are you coming from? You know. And I gave him a copy of Silence, the film I made in Taiwan. And luckily, Margie Burkhart, who is Ernest Burkhart's the character Leo plays, his great-granddaughter, she had seen Silence. And she goes, "No, don't get this wrong. There's something else going on here. I think this guy means it." You know? And so it really was, for the first 2.5 hours, it was very relaxed, and we began to accept, or they began to accept that maybe they could trust me. Now, I don't know what that means. Well, meaning, did I come up to their expectations and be as what's the word? Do justice to the rest of the story also, whether you're white or Native American, that sort of thing. I don't know. I came as close as I could.
But you know, had they read the book? Because yes, in the David Grant book, you know, there's much more emphasis on the formation of the FBI from J. Edgar Hoover than the final movie. Were the early drafts more skewed toward the FBI, and then you?
Oh, totally. Eric wrote that. Yeah,
you rearranged it, so it was more about the Osage.
Well, when I got there and I got to know Chief Standing Bear and his people there, with Addie and a number of others. It's a silly thing, but I became, to say in a way, but I became comfortable there with them and the world around them. We worked on the script for a number of years because I was also making Irishman. I just finished it, so then we got hit with COVID. But the problem, Steve, is the Western. The problem is that I love the Western genre, as you do. I grew up on it, you did too. It ended with Peckinpah's Wild Bunch. That was the end of that world, in a way. It's a new world. The Western has to be something else. So there's no way I could do a Western. You know, I never saw myself going anywhere near Hawks or Ford or Bedecker or any of those guys. And so for me, I found that by pursuing the story from the point of view of the Bureau of Investigation. Guy gets off the train, he's got beautiful boots, tilted up, got that Stetson, has that great tie, he looks around and goes into town and tries to figure out what's going on and who did it. And number one, it isn't who did it, it's who didn't do it. The whole town, everybody, we're all complicit in this. We really are. We're complicit. We're standing here now. You know, I feel that. I feel we're all complicit in what's happened, how the country was formed, our culture, everything. So that's number one. Number two, having Leo play that part. I would tilt out from the boots, go to his face, walks into town, he says nothing. Well, we never worked that way. You know what I mean? And I've seen it before. I've seen it, and I kind of see it, and I saw it that it was more like a Randolph Scott or well, you know, early Clint Eastwood. Quite honestly, what can I give? What can I find in the story of the Osage that is from the point of view of the men who don't live there coming in at a certain point? And so what we did learn was that from these big dinners we had with the Osage, where people get up and talk about what happened to their grandfathers there. By the way, apparently the generations, the new generation, the recent generation, I should say the generation before, never talked about this. And so all this was open, and naively I thought they all talked about it. And no, it was all kept quiet until the book came out. And now they knew the film was going to be made. And so they started getting up and telling stories about their grandfather who got killed, so-and-so got killed.
And I think 60 Osage were murdered. Eventually, most of those were unsolved.
Yes, no, never investigated. Yeah, forget it. But the one I got was Margie Burkhardt, when she said, you have to remember one thing, and this dinner, this big dinner, she said that her great-grandfather, Ernest, and Molly were in love. And that stayed with me. And as we're trying to do the story from the point of view of the guys coming in from the FBI and scenes with Hoover, and I said, I've seen this before. That's good. It was great. We went into the past of the Texas Rangers. It was really interesting. I was really, really tempted. But then we lost the heart of it. And at one point, Leo looked at me and said, where's the heart of the movie? Where's the heart? And I said, the heart is Molly and you. Molly and Ernest, really. Right. And I didn't say you because at that point we were still thinking of him playing the FBI. Yeah. So he looked at me and said, what if I play Ernest? I said, okay. Okay, if you play Ernest, we take script. Rip open. And instead of from the outside in, we're going from the inside out. And we're like on the ground, and scene after scene would be relentless. You know, until, as you say, until Jesse Plemons arrives.
Right. When Jesse Plemons arrives, what arrives with him is the hope of justice. And for me, what arrived with Ernest was I kept hoping for Ernest. I kept praying and hoping that he didn't know the insulin was laced with arsenic. I kept hoping that he wasn't that complicit in a woman that he truly loves, but he's torn by the righteousness of King. I mean, it's so complicated, it's so complex, but they work so well together. I mean, it's so amazing to see Bobby D and Leo D in this film together. I just realized Bobby D and Leo D. But this is your 6th collaboration with Leo, and your 11th with Bobby, and you're only 3 films shy of tying the record with John Ford, who directed John Wayne 14 times. So you can't quit yet with Bobby.
Well, I mean, with Leo, 6 films. It's just that I found that we have like minds, so to speak. I mean, there's 30 years difference. And here's the thing: he wasn't afraid to go. Let me put it this way: he was justifiably afraid to go into Ernest. In other words, he knew he was walking into the fire in a way, because how are we going to play this? It's weak, all of us. How are we going to play this guy? You know, he's so weak. Are you ready to portray somebody like that who is weak and he is pretty much delusional? He really is delusional. He really thinks that he consciously feels that King Hale, his uncle, would never let harm harm come to him, or really Molly. Molly may die because of diabetes, whatever, but they're not going to come down to that. Subconsciously, he knows it will. And you see it in every frame in his face, Leo, particularly towards the last sequences. He knows, and he keeps going forward out of fear and weakness, sort of like the character that in the film Silence with Kichijiru, the guy who kept stepping on the image of Jesus, and then coming back and asking the priest to forgive him. And then he rats the priest out to the authorities, and then he goes to the priest and says, "Forgive me."
You know, I kept thinking, because I kept trying to hang, I wanted to like somebody in that town. You know, I mean, I loved all the Osage, everybody. I wanted to like somebody in the town, and I kept hanging on to how could I like Ernest. And at one point, I kept thinking that Ernest had a similar quality to Lenny Small in Of Mice and Men.
Oh yeah, you know,
and that was kind of my way into Ernest, because in a way, you know, this film and a lot of other films that you made kind of, you know, force the audience to rediscover their own moral compass. And I'm just going to jump to that question really quickly, because I'm interested in that. And that really is that what draws you to many of your movies that are hard to root for. Because as an audience, our moral compass is being tested constantly. And in this film, you have two guys who cause us to interrogate ourselves from the very, very beginning. And especially when we start to feel something like hope for Ernest, which I did. And other characters in your films, Jake LaMotta and Travis Bickle and Kyle Sullivan, you know, Departed, and Henry Hill and Goodfellas, you know, Jordan Belfort and Wolf of Wall Street. The Godfather did this too with the Corleone family very, very successfully. And so my question, Marty, is what is it that attracts you to the dark side of nature, human nature, and then to the justice you deliver in the final scenes of many of your films?
I guess it's really, after 50 years of all this, and I don't know how else to put it, I really thought I could be, and I mean a director. You know, imagine being in the old studio system and going in and doing your joggers and that sort of thing. Instead, I wound up doing pictures that reflect the world I came from, pretty much. That doesn't mean that my parents were that way, or they certainly weren't, and a lot of my family was not, but I grew up in a world where people who were actually people I accepted as the norm were capable of doing some really heinous things, and some that had no choice, like, you know, some people got involved with robberies, or, you know, this is before drugs too, by the way, 1949 to 1959. So it's not dealing with drug dealers or whatever, it's something else going on. And I just knew a lot of them, but deep down they were decent, and they had no choice. You say, well, there's a choice, but not necessarily to a lot of people, given certain circumstances. For example, there's a mentality, too, that fascinated me. There was a guy, an old story, Nick Bellicci told me, but we know, too, that this happens. There was a guy, there was a feast on San Rocco. And the feast of San Rocco on Mott Street, you would walk with these votive offerings. Like if you had something wrong with your chest, there was a silver, a wax plate of your chest, or your leg, or your arm, which goes back to the ancient Romans. You would bring these votive offerings for the gods to heal. But you'd walk behind the saint down the street, and one guy would always be walking in procession, and he was a great thief. And he would always pray to God for the strength for him to steal more. So what does that tell us about who we are as human beings? You know what I'm saying? And so I was fascinated. And it's not me fascinated or to like them. It was, I saw the suffering. I just saw the suffering, and I don't know what could alleviate it. The church couldn't. Spirituality could. That doesn't mean that, you know, but the church, the way it was set at that time in those places, was just superficial for them. I saw a number of them would go to church and participate in the rituals, but you know, they lived they lived tough lives. They were not. And so I was, the suffering around me made me constantly analyzing and trying to feel, what the hell are we? Who are we? You know, who am I? What am I capable of? Would I be capable if I was living there and these Osage come in and they got this money from this oil, in which they didn't have to really work. And I always say this thing of, I guess the European American came in, and we came in with a Christian philosophy to a certain extent of, I don't want to minimize it, but I don't want to make that singular, and there's many different ways, but Christian thinking, the Protestant thinking of the work ethic, that, you know, you sow and you reap. You do something and you get rewarded by God. Well, these people haven't done anything. And look what they got this oil for. What is this? They don't deserve it. And also, by the way, the money, they don't know how to use it. They don't understand money. Therefore, if I said, you know, if this glass of water is $2, I charge you $2, you pay it. A week later, I said, you know, make it $3, they pay it. A few weeks later, your wife gets sick, you're tired, you hang around, you say, native comes in, you say, you know what, I think I need an extra few bucks. That water now is $10, they pay it.
Well, the wedding photo was $40.
Yeah, $40 at that time.
And I think the dealer said, you know, he sold a Pierce Arrow, and he said, and when you went around out of gas, come back and I'll sell you another Pierce Arrow.
Yeah, that's what they thought, that's what they explained. Everybody always laughs about that, but the reality was that on those roads, and you know better than I, you came from Phoenix, you know, all I know is that in New York there were a lot of potholes and things.
But yeah, when I was in Phoenix as a kid, there were potholes and it was dirt.
Yeah, well, this is, I mean, if your car, if your Pierce Arrow gets stuck in the fields with a you know, burst tire, you might as well just go back into town, get another car, and eventually go pick it up. Because there were no roads. And they also felt that they come from this Native American. The car is a horse. So you have a corral, okay? And the American and the European American were appalled. They were appalled by this. Look at these beautiful cars. And then they started painting the colors because all the cars were black. And when they started selling to the native Osage, they were saying that we want to make that one this color of the, you know, make that red, make that green. So then they started making color from there, from that point.
Marty, tell us about the moral compass of the whole film for me, and that's the brilliant and mesmerizing Lily Gladstone. I know when you met with her, you had a very interesting, memorable first meeting. Can you talk about that?
Well, we first met on Zoom, I believe. And I think it was, I had seen Ellen Lewis, had seen her in Certain Women, Kelly Reichardt's film. And she showed me the picture. I felt that she was an extraordinary performance in that film. I liked the film very much, like Kelly Reichardt's work. But I couldn't really meet. We met on Zoom at that time. And so I immediately sensed that she had the command of what we needed. She had the gravitas, and she also had a wry sense of humor. And there's that intelligence factor, which is interesting for how to play this role, you know. And her own activism, I think, in Native American and Native American issues made me feel very, very excited. The problem was that COVID hit, and everything stopped for a year. You know.
Well, you actually shut down for a year the pre-production.
Okay, yeah, we haven't even really started pre-production. I don't really remember. I remember that we brought the script. The script we had, Paramount wanted to make Jim wanted to make a Jim.
It's Jim G.
Yeah, Jim G. And so we had the whole thing.
Jim's here tonight.
Yeah. But then we changed it, so they said, okay, listen, go ahead, do what you're going to do. Apple came in and Paramount came in to distribute the film. And so during that period, things were very, very blurry. I didn't even know if the film was going to get made, quite honestly. But we just kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, trying that other version of the script in which Leo would play Ernest, you know. The key then was to get Leo together with Lily. We had to do that on Zoom. And, you know, it was like, oh, it's really important, we should do face-to-face. No, we got to do it on Zoom. And immediately, when we finished the Zoom, Leo buzzed me right back, said, she's great. We got to do it. I said, no, absolutely. The thing with Lily, she's here, I think, is I relied on her greatly, and I relied on her as conduit to the Native Americans, to Osage, to all of them around. And even to the point when she was learning the Osage. By the way, a lot of the Osage language is lost, but they're putting it back together, so to speak. And there was a teacher, Chris, and he was teaching her, and they taught Leo too. And also Bob De Niro, who liked it so much he wanted to do most of the film in Osage, and I said, no, you can't. Come on, you guys. This is a great language. You guys I know. It's so, you know, anyway. But she would hear stories from Chris, for example, a story about the coyote and the whirlwind, which is a folk story of the Osage, in which the whole idea of calling Leo's character Ernest a coyote, you know, and the scene in the car, for example, he's driving her, he's a taxi driver, and she speaks in Osage, and he says, what are you saying? And she continues speaking Osage. She goes, I don't know what it was, but it must be Indian for handsome devil. And that was an improv, and she really reacts, laughter, and that's genuine. And that's, I think, that moment on screen is you can see the relation between not only Ernest and Molly, but also Leo and Lily. Yeah. And how they just go from that moment and then sort of trusting each other in these scenes and working off each other. But many of the suggestions came through Lily and came through Chad Renfro, came through all the people working with the Osage in front of the camera, behind the camera.
Yeah, because, you know, Lily was able to, with just a glance or just a look away, she had such an inner life and an inner monologue. I could almost read her mind about how she was feeling about you know, Ernest and about her sisters and her fear that Anna was going to go too far one day. And I also think the supporting players, just the faces of the entire supporting cast. The sisters are all incredible. The mom is amazing. But you cast locals a lot of the time also. And you also had some performing artists like Sturgill Simpson and Charlie Musselwhite in the movie.
Yeah.
But they all look not of our time. You know, it looks like you and Ellen Lewis, the casting director, got into a time machine and went back into the early 20th century to cast the movie.
With this Stetson hat, it was great. You know,
it was amazing. And who is the leader of the Osage Tribal Council of the 25 original families? And that amazing monologue he had.
Yeah.
That I was crying in that scene.
That's Everett Waller. He is that way, Steve. That's the way he is. He's a big guy. And I go up to him and I reach like his chest, you know, basically. Everett, you want to? Yes, I'll do anything you say, sir. You know, and then it was like, it's your world. Tell me what you want. Okay, Everett, if you come over here, yeah. All right, and the other guy is Yancey Redcorn. He plays Chief Bonnycastle. But what happened that day, it was the dialogue from Yancey talking about, well, 2 people of our group has been killed. We're going to send Barney McBride to Washington, D.C., and all this going on. And it sounded like so much exposition, but not in a good way. Even though it was based on the actual council and what they said that day, I felt I don't know. I felt uncomfortable. So it was very hot. And I asked Everett, because I knew he would do it. I said, I need a cutaway of some of the faces of the people listening to the council. Could you just do some off-camera for me? At that point, I became more, he was approachable. He got to know me a little bit, he was approachable.
It was less intimidating.
Yeah. And he said, just looked at me. And all of a sudden, I walk out, and I hear this noise, and De Niro comes running out. I said, you see what's going on in there? And I go back in, and he is haranguing off camera the group of people for reactions. And And as soon as he stopped, I said, do it again, but only seated. Could you? He said, I think I can. And he sat down, I put 2 cameras down, and that was it. He went on.
He improvised.
Improvised all of it. He improvised all of it. You know, the babies, we wrote our warriors over the dead babies. You know, the Osage die, do not let them die alone. And then the final line, which has always moves me to tears, when he says, we didn't ask for the great life, we just asked for life. We just asked for life. He goes, oh. And that did it, and we all froze. That's the scene.
That's amazing.
You know?
That's amazing.
He speaks to all. And when he goes on like that, and then he has a wonderful thing. He goes, "Thank you, Chief." That's Waller, yeah, Everett. But he couldn't come to the Cannes screenings and everything. He couldn't take the flying, I think.
Just quickly, because I'm getting a little rap signal, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the imagery of your film. You know, Lizzie's mom and Lizzie both are visited by the harbinger of death, the owl, in both of those scenes. There's this imagery in this that I'll never shake off. I think one of the most beautiful things, images in the movie, is where when Lizzie dies, her ancestors come to escort her from this world and into the next. And then all of a sudden you see, we cut back and she's gone and the family's around her. I mean, this image is like the little girl walking across the top of the coffin, the tradition. What do the 2 apples mean?
Well, that's the food for the deceased. Just a symbolic thing. Well, we found out again through Marianne Bauer, who was my associate producer, my archivist for many years. She was trying to keep it all straight because we actually, after Eric and I made the different passes of the script, we kept working every day and changing and writing and changing and writing. And she would keep it all straight for me. You know, you're repeating yourself here. That's not accurate with the Osage. But she found out that the funerals of the burial of the eldest, part of the ritual is to have the youngest of the family walk on the coffin. So we gotta have that.
I had never seen that before.
Yeah, and there were more things like that, Steve. I tried to put in. I got in as many as I could.
I love the afraid lights to prevent murder from happening into the homes.
That's real.
That's all real. The afraid lights.
The thing about the beauty I felt of Lizzie's passing is she is taken home by her ancestors, and she's taken home by her mother and father were standing there. That day we shot it. The weather was beautiful. I'm just sitting out there, and I saw them take her and move her out down, and I said, that's the way we should all go, in a sense. And the whole crew felt it, and it was so beautiful, you know.
I have to ask you, Marty, did Bobby D really break the paddle on Leo's ass? Did you see it break? Did you see it crack?
I deserved it.
And Leo fell off the thing? And it was cracked, you saw it, right?
Yeah, he said it broke, that's fine.
Was it a happy accident?
Yes, of course, yeah. No, it's fine, it should have broken, it should have released, it should have been flying or something. Oh, God. Well, we wanted to get the things, the ritual of the Osage. I also wanted to have the ritual of the European. And part of that was KKK, and all right, it doesn't always have to be negative also, it just happened to be. And also the Masons. And part of that was kind of almost like a frat boy hazing situation where it was an infantile, a kind of infantile action in a way, like treating him like a child. And so for me, I did more Masonic stuff, but I couldn't get it in the film. Right?
I did it because that was out of nowhere when that happened. And it was all about, you have to handle your woman. You're not handling her the way we need to. She's going to DC, and you let her. And it was shocking. It was amazing. And there's a final question, Marty, and I could go on. Obviously, we could all sit here for a long time. I love this so much. How did you come up with the brilliant epilogue of the Lucky Strike radio hour? And what were you intending?
Well, the thing was that It's from the book. It's the birth of the FBI, right? And so the FBI needed propaganda, and so they went on radio. And I grew up listening to radio before we had TV, so I listened to gangbusters and shows like that. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great? This thing, all this has happened. People have died, tragedy, suffering, anguish, and all this, and it became a radio show. It became a radio show. Well, yes, but it became a radio show, And in a sense, it became entertainment. And we, again, it's my own, I'm not accusing anyone, but the point is, it's my own belief of being complicit in that, enjoying the entertainment. And even this film is entertainment in that sense. I tried, you know what I mean? I tried to make it as truthful as possible, as honest, I should say, as possible. And therefore, I said, we have to end it with one of those radio shows where you see, after all this, that's what the American public was led to think of or believe of the situation. And in the middle of the show, it suddenly becomes an epilogue. Because if it's really 1936 in a radio studio, what is he telling you? How could the announcer know that Bill Hale died at the age of 87? You follow, suddenly we make a little trick and move on, and then we had the open, and I felt that I didn't know if I could direct the actor to do that. And having lived with the Osage and everybody there in Oklahoma for so long, I felt I had to try it myself.
We're lucky SAG said, or we could have been talking.
I know.
On this stage tonight.
I know, I got a little bit of a waiver for that, I heard, but it was only 36 seconds. But I said, listen, let me do it. If it doesn't work, I know the angle, I can get another actor to do it. But as I was doing it, I kind of felt it. And I also felt that, in a way, as I say, my own complicity in life and the world as it exists, trying to have compassion for those who are suffering in the world, that's all.
Well, you are the master of our medium, and this is your masterpiece.
Thank you.